All right, Johnny,
How you doing?
welcome back.
Thank you, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So your first video was such a huge hit
Yeah,
on, I think, for a lot of reasons, but the most important was the message that you sent about forgiveness. I think is something that everybody can apply to their own lives.
amen, amen.
I'm not a religious person, but I think that forgiveness is the most important thing we should all try to work on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Been having a lot of questions as well, Mark, and I really do appreciate White Underbelly for giving me that platform because I went from I just started buzzing. It was crazy, like you had mentioned. People have been messaging me, and it's so many messages and DMs every day that I can't even get to it. It's so much. But one thing that I've been kind of asked a lot was the question of how do I forgive somebody, and how did I get to the core of the root, like the root issue, the core of the issue. And so, I wanted to kind of talk about that where, like the heart, for example, and I had mentioned in the episode in the beginning, the heart is like a container that holds everything, all of our happiness, all of our sorrows, forgiveness, sadness, everything is held inside of our hearts. And, but the heart, like a field, if it's not tilled, if it's not cultivated, it can spoil when the weeds crop up. So likewise, our hearts often is neglected. We try to take care of the outside things. We try to make money. We try to, boost the outside surface level things. But in our hearts, we really neglect that aspect. And, this heart, I liken it to like the world of the heart. It's a vast thing. It holds love, and love itself is endless, right? It's boundless. People go to extreme lengths for love. Like, let's say parents will do anything for their kids, even give their own lives. Spouses, husbands will do anything for their wives. This love is so endless and boundless. Where is this love found? It's found inside of our heart. So that must mean our heart is just as expansive, if not more, to house that. So I liken it to like the world. Let's say we're in this world and we don't have navigation, we don't have directions, we don't have GPS. It's very simple for us to get lost in this world, right? Likewise, in our hearts, if we don't have that navigation, we don't have that direction, it's very simple to get lost in ourselves, lost in that depression, lost in that void, that emptiness that everybody feels. And I really feel like all of us are interconnected through the heart, but through these struggles, basically. So, I've been really helping people kind of understand and providing that compass, providing that direction for people through my story and through just one-on-one, fellowships and Bible studies and things like that. So, everyone knows my story. I'm became like an overnight sensation through White Underbelly, and people were, asking me like, why do you feel like you went through those things? Was it because of the environment that you grew up in? Gangs, drugs, alcohol, racism, all of that probably influenced your life, right? So actually, if that was the case, that would mean that anyone who came from that area should live the way that I live. I have friends who also grew up with me, and they didn't live the life that I lived. So the environment does have some kind of impact on our lifestyle. But as I had mentioned earlier, I had this peculiar mindset of believing and trusting myself, trusting my heart, following myself. One time we were walking through the Section 8 apartment housing, and a friend of mine, he was also 12 years old. I was 12 at the time. He was Chinese. He had a father who was abusive, a mother who was abusive. We were very similar. And we were walking through the apartments, and there was a known drug dealer there. And he had weed at the time. And I was 12. I've never done any drugs at that time. He gave me a joint, and he's like, "You want to get high? Like, let's try it out, And I was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, absolutely. Like, let's do it." But when he asked my friend was like, "Oh, what if I get addicted to it?" And we looked at him, we're like, "Off of weed? Like one joint, like you'll get addicted? Like, come on, man, that's absurd." But he then proceeded to say, well, what if I get caught? You know, what if my mom sees me? Like, my life will be ruined. And we were just like, honestly, we just laughed at him. And needless to say, you know, he felt some type of way and he just went and did his thing that day. And I proceeded to, you know, smoke weed, and I got into harder drugs like meth and coke and things like that. And I ended up going to jail and going to prison and so on and so forth. But this kid, I still talk to him till this day. He ended up never joining a gang. He ended up graduating high school. He ended up going to Cal Berkeley, right? And he graduated that with, you know, honors, as well as he got a CPA license, and now he works for Deloitte, a top 5 accounting firm in the US. People looking outside in will be like, whoa, it's because he didn't do drugs. That's why he's like that. No, actually, what was the difference was he didn't trust himself. He couldn't precisely, accurately say, I'm gonna get hooked or I'm not. So he just didn't even try it. He couldn't precisely and accurately say his life would or wouldn't be ruined after doing these things. So he just didn't even do it. He really didn't trust himself, you know, whereas me, little 12-year-old, seeing all the crackheads in the apartment, seeing drugs everywhere, knowing that drugs will mess people up, I had this confidence in myself that I'm not an addictive person. I'm never gonna be like them. I'm gonna be this, I'm gonna be that. And I really trusted myself. And so for me personally, the root of all of my problems came from believing in myself and trusting myself, who was imperfect. At 12 years old, I had that mindset, which led me on to be the way that I was. And so why did I trust myself was because I thought I was good. You know, I thought that, you know, everything I did was correct. So I followed that. And, you know, we were in Korea recently. We were there for a Ministers of Youth Forum. So there was 30 different countries that had like Japan, Korea, you know, Ghana, Africa, like 30 different countries. They had the Ministers of Youth meet, and we were meeting to kind of, you know, help the youth, help the next generation, because the issue and problem with youth is a problem worldwide, not just, you know, to the US. So we went there. I was able to give my testimony, talk about my story, and give a little hope to the ministers. And we had received a phone call that there was a person that was, you know, dying on his deathbed. He had a few hours to maybe a day maximum to live. And so they called us to come and kind of pray over him. And we agreed. So the backstory to this man is that he's a construction worker, and he had gotten drunk one night at a club or a bar, and he flagged down a taxi. And the taxi driver, you know, upon entering his car, he told the taxi driver, hey, you know, this is my destination. The taxi driver said that'll be $10. He paid, and then he knocked out. When he was woken up again, taxi driver said, hey, that'll be $10. So of course an argument, you know, ensued, and he was like, well, I paid already. And taxi driver said you didn't, and they started fighting and physically. And of course the cops were called. And when the cops were called, they took away the person who was drunk. And so they, you know, he spent the night in jail, woke up in the morning, they released him. As soon as he was released, he went to a gas station and at that gas station, he got a gallon jug of gasoline. He went straight back to that police station and he started screaming at the top of his lungs, like, everybody at the Ansan Police Department, come out right now and apologize to me. You guys betrayed innocence. I was not the wrong person here. I was the victim. I was right, essentially. And of course they came out, they said, hey, you can handle this in court if you feel this way. You know, just go home. You're probably still drunk. So he started pouring the gasoline on himself. And, you know, next thing you know, he lights the match and he says, if you don't apologize to me, I will prove to you that I was right. And so essentially what he was saying was, I will die for this. And he actually set himself on fire. So fast forward, this is the man that we have to pray for. He's burned more than 80% of his body. He's only got a few hours to live. But as we walk in, I could hear him actually still mouthing off, you know, saying, I was right, you know, you guys. And this became like national news. Actually, it became like all the broadcasting stations were coming to him and, and interviewing him, and they were actually siding with him. They were like, the police are corrupt for doing this to you. You did pay, and these taxi drivers are scam artists, and it was just kind of doing that, and what I noticed when I was walking in my heart, I had this heart that this verse kept coming to me. Our righteousness is like filthy rags. So, when I walked over to him, all of the, media, they were kind of rushing out the room and they were leaving. It was just us and the ministers or the ministers and his family that was in the room. So when he was sitting there, we were getting ready to pray, but I couldn't help it. It just came out of me. I said, you're right. You're right that you paid. Obviously, you paid. You believe that you paid. You even burned your body to a crisp. To prove that you were right. But there's one thing, sir, that you're absolutely wrong about. And he's like, what? He blew up. He's like, what am I wrong about? I'm the victim here. I'm right. What are you talking about? Do you even know? Have you ever been through this? Have you ever been conned? He was like kind of yelling at me. And I said, you're right. Like I said, you've been conned. I agree with that. But there's this one thing. Please hear me out. And he's like, okay, talk. Like, what am I wrong about? I said, yes, you paid the stuff. Yes, it was $10, the fee and all that. And you did all of that. But if you look in the corner, there's your wife and there's your daughter. And they're sitting there and they're sad. What did they do to deserve that? Over $10, your own righteousness. He just started to cry, and I told him, if you think about it, yes, you paid the $10, but your wife now has to, go on living widowed without a husband, without you. Your daughter, who's 9 years old, has to grow up without a father, all because of what? That righteousness that you felt, that self-preservation, that I'm right no matter what, and I'm gonna prove this, But what you did in that wake was leave everyone around you, your family, who's most important to you, sad and depressed and lonely now. And so, as I was saying this to him, he started to kind of calm down, and he really just started to regret everything. And at that time, we prayed for him, preached him the gospel, and a few hours later, he passed away, sadly. But just like that man, I realized that I was the same way. I had the same heart. I always thought that I was right. I always felt like no matter what, I'm gonna die for what I believe in and what I think is correct. So, Mark, like have you ever been around people who are always right all the time? Like it's not fun to be around those people, right? You become miserable and it's just like they push everybody away. You can't get through to them. They're stubborn. They can't hear you out, and they're not open-minded. Well, I was just like that man, pushing everybody away who would say something to me. And that was because I was right, all the time. So many people ask me too, through these DMs, why do you feel like you believed in yourself so much? Like, why do you feel like you were right all the time? Well, the reason why I trusted myself is very simple, is because I never thought deeply about anything. I had what I call this first level of thought, where it was all impulse and it was very superficial and it was very emotional and almost always dangerous. Like if I was angry, I would just fight. If I didn't want to do homework, I didn't do homework. If I felt this way, I just reacted off of that. And I never thought deeply about anything, not that I could remember. And, I was a person who really lived this way, and I ended up in prison and places like that. And a lot of people in this world, they also kind of think based off of emotions, And when I lived like that, I lived a really miserable lifestyle, So at that point, I was able to say, like, when I trusted myself, that was the problem that led to all my other issues. I was like the root issue, for those who ask me, wow, how do you get to the root problem? So, and what I call the second level of thinking is what we call deep thinking, right? So how do we think deeply? A lot of people think that they think deeply, but they misconstrue deep thinking with overthinking, right? So a lot of the times we don't know if we thinking deeply, if we overthink. So how I found out how to think deeply is at the core of deep thinking, there's empathy. It's empathetic. right? So when I'm able to reflect and look at my life and realize the times that I shot people and I robbed people and I stabbed people, I'm able to see that, wow, I really was wrong for following myself. These are people that, also go through the struggle, and I'm able to actually gain hope in my life. Like, okay, when you think deeply, essentially, you gain hope. But overthinking, at the core of overthinking, is negativity. So if I have thoughts like, man, I shouldn't have done that, I'm so stupid, I'm such a worthless human being, then my self-worth goes out the window, confidence goes out the window, and I start to just from inside rot. And that's what overthinking does to us, So I try to teach people nowadays, what's the difference between deep thinking and what's the difference between overthinking? A lot of us have to deep think more, think deeply more and less of overthinking. And so, I liken it to, there's two verses that I really wanted to share as well, was Romans chapter 3, verse 23. It says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So what does that mean? Well, it means that there's a glory of God and we fell short, so we're all sinners, right? And people agree with that. So when I attached myself to that verse, yes, I'm a sinner, no matter what, that's my first level of thought. It says I'm a sinner, right? But the amazing thing is, the very next verse that says Romans chapter 3, verse 24, it says being justified freely through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. So if we break that down very simply and think deeply about that verse, it says being justified. Justified is in past tense, which means that it's completed. If something is completed, it means it's already done. So we're already just, and then it says freely, which means for free. By who and through who? Jesus Christ. So when I connected myself, I had a choice. Do I connect to the word of God that says that I'm a sinner, or do I connect to the word of God that says that I am justified? Well, if I connect to the word that I'm a sinner, well, how do sinners have to live? They have to live up and down. They have to live sinning and repenting, sinning and repenting, sinning and repenting until they die. So, but when I connected my heart to the word that said, hey, I'm justified, and I started to think deeply, who is God? For people who believe in God, who is God? He is the creator of all things, right? So if he's created everything, he's created heaven and hell. So if he's saying, and he has the keys to heaven and hell, that we're justified, then who am I to say that I'm not? As I was able to accept that and think deeply, yes, God, you called me righteous, not because I did well, but because of Jesus Christ. So when I accepted that, my heart, my life completely changed. And so, I wanted to talk also about connection. Connection is something that is really important. And I like to use analogies. People are always like, your analogies are good. But for me, connection is kind of like electricity. Let's say I have a washer at the house and, I'm trying to manually wash the clothes and I pour the water and I pour the detergent. Well, I'm limited in my power. So sooner or later, I'm going to get tired. I won't wash the clothes efficiently, etc. But let's say I take the cord and I plug it into the outlet that's filled with electricity. I just push a button and it can run for however long I have electricity and however long, the lights are on, essentially. So why I'm saying this is because that connection is really important. Likewise, there's all this electricity in this world, but if we don't connect to it, then we don't harness that power, right? It doesn't become ours. Same thing. For believers, God has all the power, infinite power, to take care of our problems, to take care of our, anxiety and emptiness and void. But if we don't connect to that, right? If we don't connect to God, we don't believe in that, then that power doesn't become ours, and we are left to our own limited capabilities, living this up and down lifestyle. I have to take care of my depression. I have to seek medical help. I have to take antidepressants. Whatever ways that we're able to take care of it, it's very limited compared to this other power. So people are always asking me, like, what is it, Johnny? What is it that changed you? What is it that truly brought that redemption and brought that forgiveness? People ask me, how do you forgive people? There's just no way that I can do it. I can't understand the victim apologizing to the aggressor. Well, like I said, it comes down to believing in myself, trusting in myself. When I trusted myself and I was right, what happened? Just like that drunk person, he was able to push everybody away and he lived miserably. And he ended up leaving his family even sad, and everyone around him was just miserable, you know? So, you know, that first level of thought that I want people to understand is it's very dangerous. You know, if someone cuts me off and, you know, recently coming over here, it's Skid Row, somebody cut me off, you know, and the first thought came out, I'm human. What the heck is this guy doing? Man? He's dumb, you know? Oh, and then I had a peculiar thought come out, like if I had my gun, you know, it came out. Well, let's say I followed that thought. If I did, I probably wouldn't make it here doing this interview. I'd probably be in prison. I'd leave all of my family members and all the people that have followed me, I would leave them disappointed and hurt. So I was able to see that, oh, every time these thoughts will come. It's just, they're resilient. These thoughts are resilient. But we don't have to follow those thoughts. We don't have to do those things. Yeah. So, you know, honestly, you know, I'm so thankful that as I'm a person who lives like everyone else, and I'm not better than anyone, I also have thoughts. I also have these depressive emotions come to me. And recently I had a thought that I'm lonely, you know. And I thought about it, like, wow, why is this lonely thought coming to me? You know, am I really lonely? I could call up Mark at any time. I could call up my friends. I thought about it deeper. Oh, these destructive thoughts are coming to me. And let's say I accept it. Oh, I'm lonely. Well, what does a lonely person do? He starts to isolate himself, go in his room, not want to come out, become lonely, start to maybe turn to drugs, to self-medicate. So it's really that one thought that kind of leads people to misery. And I have one more thing, like I have a friend, you know, that actually, he's a really good looking guy. He's like a model, you know, I'm not gonna put all his business out there, but he's a model. He fornicates with a lot of women, you know, to be honest. I think he's had well over 200 different women. And he's told me flat out that he doesn't use a condom. Like he's just, that's his thing, you know? And recently, about 4 months ago, he told me that he had AIDS. And, you know, honestly, I wasn't shocked. I was like, well, I mean, you know, if you're not using protection and you're doing that type of stuff, well, it makes sense. But then something came to my heart, like, you know, how do you know you have AIDS? Like, I asked him, did you get tested? And he's like, nah, bro, I didn't. But I lost weight, which I did see him lose a significant amount of weight. And he said he had symptoms. And he even said the girl that called him said that she had AIDS, right? And so, you know, to have him get checked up and whatnot. But he said he felt really embarrassed. He had these thoughts that he's embarrassed and shameful. People kind of know who this guy is. So he put it off, you know. But I told him, bro, you're not a physician. Don't trust yourself, you know, please go and get tested. It's very simple. Just go in there, get tested, muster up the courage, let's do it. 3 months after that, you know, he sends me a really long text. It's like a suicide text. It's very eerie, telling me that, you know, I didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve a friend like you. Please, you know, look to the mountains when you see, you know, remember me. And I was just shocked, you know, and I dropped everything that I did and, you know, drove out from the Lancaster State Prison all the way back down to basically Alhambra, and you know, kicking on his door, knocking on his door, and there he was, you know, sitting in his boxers with the gun on his hip, you know, and he was contemplating him. The look in his eyes, it was just like this blank stare, like it was just not him anymore. So I was like, hey, bro, like just get dressed, put this stuff down, you know, come stay with me for 3 days, you know, let's hang out. I'll get you tested. I got Kaiser Permanente. Like, it's all good. I'll pay for the full panel. I'll handle it. And he was like, all right, bro. All right, whatever, you know, whatever. So we get him tested for everything. Gonorrhea, chlamydia, everything. And it takes about like 48 to 72 hours to get the test results. And for everything, he did a blood draw and all that. And the results come back and he's negative for everything. And right then he starts getting happy. But I explained to him, do you understand what I mean when I say that, you know, you can't follow your thoughts? Because what was really dragging you? The reality was that you were normal, you're healthy. But this thought entered you that I have AIDS, and it was resilient. And it made sense. You lost weight, what you saw, what you believed in, you thought it was a good thing. But Where did it drag you to? Ultimately, almost killing yourself. And if you killed yourself, it would have literally been for nothing, for nothing. And he realized that. Now he's coming to church with me, and because before he would say that, he would say, well, if I don't trust myself, who am I going to trust, huh? He would say stuff like that, and I'm like, no, that's understandable. But at the same time, when these thoughts are bringing you again to this negative part, this flowing negatively, you have to be able to step on the brake and kind of analyze and realize that these are not my thoughts. So yeah, it was so crazy how that was happening, and how he was able to see that, wow, this one thought could lead me to literally killing myself. Everything was fine. He's financially stable, nice house, lives, in Arcadia, Alhambra area, has money, really good career, women all over the place, drugs if he wants, whatever. It seems like he has all these things that make him happy, but he also trusted in himself a lot. So when he was really happy, he was super happy. But when he was depressed, super down, super depressed, happy, sad. And it's just, he's living this roller coaster lifestyle, but now he's having a lot more peace inside of his heart. And it starts with the distrust in yourself. I could trust myself if my thoughts don't change, but the problem is I have different thoughts every day. One minute I want to do this, next minute I change and want to do that. So it's really dangerous to trust this thing that's constantly changing. And like I said in the first interview, that if someone does one thing, or if someone says one thing and does another, then that person is a liar. So likewise, we don't trust people like that, but it's funny, we trust our hearts that are constantly changing. I want to do this today. Nah, I'm okay. I want to do that. Nah, I'm okay. It's like, it's really dangerous to do that. People don't realize that. So yeah.
How old are you, Johnny?
Me? 33.
33.
Yeah.
You were doing the gang thing for how long?
For 12 until pretty much, I've never actually left. Technically we just graduated. Like I didn't get jumped out or beat up
But you were really active for how long?
I was active all throughout the prison term. So I would say until about 24 years old. I've been inactive technically for about 10 years now. Yeah.
Are there things that you did when you were in that life that you look back now and just can't believe you were involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things, like I said, with all the robbery stuff and without like shootings and stuff like that. I'll be honest, I carried a gun at first when I was a kid, younger, because I thought it was just something that I could scare people with, you know what I mean? And I never thought that I would shoot, at people. But the crazy thing was, living in the streets like that, people will, you'll have shootouts. It's bound to happen. And so it's like, even though I didn't want to, if someone was trying to take my life, I was forced to do it. You know what I mean? So that's the power of the gun, basically. Is a lot of people who are real, they understand what I'm saying. Because I've shared this with a lot of inmates too. And they're like, bro, I never thought I would just blast somebody. It's not easy to just shoot somebody, right? Like you gotta be kind of ruthless. But it is when you're trying to defend yourself. And that's usually what was happening. So yeah, I remember shooting my first gun at 12 years old. And it was crazy. It was a crazy experience, honestly. People know that I've been to YA and when I got out, but my second offense was actually, 2 counts of assault with deadly weapon. And what happened then was we were going to rob somebody, and they ended up fleeing in their car. This person had a lot of money. I remember, I think it was in Roland Heights, somewhere like that. And they took, their car and they were running, and we were chasing them on the freeway. And then we hop out of the car in the middle of the freeway and we just start shooting, and it was like a full shootout, and we were able to get away. But this is how much I didn't think as a kid, how dumb I was. I used my own car registered in my name to do this crime, and that's what I mean when it ties into that first level of thinking, where I just never thought, I thought I was untouchable. I thought like, I didn't care about the police. Nobody's gonna mess with me. And no one would even dare try to step to me. And I had that type of heart. So yeah, I did that. And sure enough, warrant came out for my arrest. And I was on the run for a little bit because of that. And, I remember my father receiving that letter and bringing it to me like, Johnny, what is this? And then I just played dumb, like, oh, I don't know what that is, but it said warrant out for your arrest. And, the crazy thing was, the cops came with like 10, 10 police, and they bang, knocked down the door. It was really sad. They put my mom like on her face, put my dad on his face, put my brother on his face, like, and they just took me away. They pretty much like firemen's carried me out of that, and when I was in the vehicle, they were like, oh yeah, you're gonna go away for a long time. I remember them saying this to me, and I was just like, F you, pig, like just like yelling at them and stuff. But I remember the guy punched me straight in my face, like boom, and I was handcuffed, but he's like, yeah, call me that again, So it was just crazy, like those types of things happen, and people wouldn't, like, who don't come from this lifestyle, they don't understand that stuff like that actually happens. If you're mouthing off to a cop, you're most likely gonna get beat up. Like, that's just what it is. Especially if they they have charges on you and there's a warrant on you. Like, the judge obviously knew that you're pretty much guilty. So yeah, it was crazy. Like, I have that story, and yeah, it was nuts. Now that I think about it, I'm so thankful that I don't live like that anymore. Trusting and believing what I think, and not thinking deeply, and just, I'll just rob this liquor store. There's cameras, I don't care. We all look alike. We're all Asian, like, doesn't matter. I'm so glad that I don't think like that anymore, because it caused so much pain for everybody in my life. It caused pain for my brother, it caused pain for my mom, my dad. And I just, I'm very thankful that we've kind of moved on from all of that,
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Another great talk, Johnny.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great seeing you again.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thank you.